Adia collapses onto the grass in the castle gardens, her fall echoing amidst the quiet scenery. Shihab gazes down at her with a mocking sneer, his eyes filled with contempt as he stifles a cruel laugh. He ruthlessly declares that Adia possesses neither divine power nor athletic ability, claiming the truth only makes her sister look pitiful by comparison. Overwhelmed by humiliation, Adia's only thought is a desperate wish to escape and return home. A gentle voice suddenly interrupts her despair, noting her presence in the garden. A mysterious, handsome man with dark hair emerges from the scenery, surrounded by drifting petals. He smiles softly, his expression radiant and calming amidst the falling leaves. Adia looks up in bewilderment, her eyes wide as she tries to process the stranger's sudden appearance. The stranger kneels and takes her hand, helping her rise from the ground with a courtly grace. As their gazes meet, a brilliant light erupts between them, surrounding the pair in a dazzling aura. Layla and Shihab recoil in shock, shielding their eyes from the blinding radiance emanating from the two figures. Shihab's arrogance vanishes as he recognizes the man's identity with a look of stunned disbelief. Narratives speak of the dream-interpreting saint, the revered object of worship within the holy kingdom of Mya. Legends warn of a dream demon that possesses and kills its victims, a threat that has existed in the kingdom for ages. Only the dream-interpreting saint holds the power to exorcise this demon and break its deadly curses. Though traditionally inherited by the eldest Sirio's daughter, the sacred magic has currently manifested in the second daughter, Layla. The scene shifts to a flashback of domestic abuse as a violent noise shatters the peace. Layla screams as she unleashes a burst of magic, feigning a loss of balance or control to attack her sister. A bystander reacts with feigned surprise at the sudden commotion. Feigning innocence, Layla apologizes to Adia, claiming she lost control of her holy power due to fatigue. Adia stands drenched and trembling while Layla looks on with a facade of concern. Their mother intervenes, coldly stating that as the older sister, Adia must forgive her younger sibling's small mistakes. Layla leans in with a cruel smirk, whispering to ask if Adia is jealous of her superior abilities. Adia attempts to deny the accusation, but her voice is drowned out by the oppression of her family. Without warning, Layla unleashes another torrent of magic, attacking her sister again under the guise of an accident. The mother scolds Adia for being unable to dispel even a simple curse, noting that no strong holy power has appeared in the family for a century. She dismisses Adia's feelings, asserting that there is no point in resenting Layla, the destined great saintess. Layla delivers a final insult, declaring it pathetic for Adia to even compare herself to her. A servant interrupts the tension to announce the arrival of Lord Shihab. The mother orders Adia to clean up the mess, coldly remarking that relying on Layla won't help her improve. Adia obediently kneels to pick up the shattered glass from the wet floor, submitting to their demands. Shihab arrives and stares at Adia with visible disgust, asking why she is wearing such soaking wet clothes. Adia stands silently in the gloom, her expression downcast as she endures the humiliation of her sodden, disheveled appearance. Layla's voice mocks her from afar, feigning pity while criticizing Adia's failure to dress like a proper count's daughter. Adia remains isolated in the garden, gazing wistfully at the gazebo where the others sit, wondering when her life spiraled into this misery. Shihab al-Marapi, the eldest son of the powerful Marquis family and leader of the Holy Knights, is introduced as Adia's fiancé. Adia recalls a tender memory from their past where Shihab gently tended to her wound, acknowledging her efforts to become a worthy wife. In that fleeting moment of kindness, Adia had beamed with pure happiness, her cheeks flushed with genuine affection. She remembers greeting him with eager warmth, her heart once filled with hope at the mere sight of him. Their engagement was a political pact sealed by the Marapi families well before either of them had even been born. Now, Adia realizes with bitterness that the union is unwanted by everyone involved, serving only the interests of their houses. Shihab callously demands that Adia surrender the engagement brooch, claiming it does not suit her and implying it belongs with her sister. Adia refuses to hand over the heirloom, steadfastly stating that she cannot part with the fiancé's token without her father's permission. Shihab's eyes narrow in cold displeasure as he questions her defiance, his tone dripping with intimidation. He arrogantly asserts his superiority, hinting that his preference for Layla should outweigh any formal traditions. Layla dismisses Adia, telling her to go home so she can tend to Shihab, while he cruelly mocks Adia for potentially carrying a sickness. Heartbroken and rejected, Adia turns and flees, her internal monologue screaming her desperate desire to escape this reality. She struggles for breath as she runs, the physical exertion mirroring the suffocating weight of her emotional pain. Her mind drifts to the mysterious boy from her dreams, wondering if he is the savior destined to take her away from this torment. The narrative flashes back 3 years, revealing a younger Adia standing bewildered in a strange, reflective expanse of water. She realizes she has wandered into the world of the nightmare demon, a sinister realm born from darkness. This dimension is a place of malice that amplifies negative emotions and manifests corruption as physical illness. Adia briefly fears she has been possessed, but quickly deduces the true nature of the cursed space surrounding her. She splashes through the water, running urgently as she spots figures collapsed in the distance. Identifying them as victims of the sleeping sickness, she rushes to the side of a fallen boy to check his condition. Panic sets in as she observes the severity of his symptoms, realizing the corruption has taken a deep hold. She understands that without immediate intervention, the patient's lives are in grave danger. Though she knows her holy power is unstable, Adia resolves to act, refusing to let them die without a fight. She clasps her hands in fervent prayer, focusing all her will on summoning the magic needed to save him. With no other option, Adia offers her own blood as a catalyst to amplify her spell. A slash of light cuts through the darkness as she activates her power, the sacrifice triggering a potent release of energy. Adia coughs violently, physically drained but relieved to see her holy power successfully manifesting. The boy awakens as the corruption fades, murmuring that he feels surprisingly well as he sits up. He turns to face his healer, his expression shifting to one of shock as he recognizes Adia. A warning cry tears through the air as Adia reacts to the impending danger. She throws up her hands to unleash a massive burst of light, shielding the boy from the encroaching darkness. Onlookers watch in stunned disbelief, realizing she is actively purifying the nightmare demon with her surge of power. The intensity of the magic leaves Adia breathless, her body trembling from the sudden expenditure of energy. As the danger subsides, she turns to walk away across the water, leaving the boy kneeling in her wake. She glances back with a gentle, reassuring smile, while the boy blushes, captivated by her strength and kindness. His face lights up with pure gratitude as he sincerely thanks her for saving his life. Adia's heart skips a beat and her cheeks flush, caught off guard by the genuine warmth of his appreciation. The dream world begins to dissolve around them, fading into particles of light as the connection wavers. The boy marvels at the beautiful, disappearing scenery, unaware that their time together is rapidly running out. Panic seizes Adia as she realizes she must wake up immediately to escape the collapsing realm before she dies. Just as she turns to flee, the boy reaches out and firmly grabs her arm, begging her to wait. In a gesture of deep reverence and promise, he bows his head and presses a gentle kiss to her hand. Adia stands frozen in shock, her voice failing her as she processes the sudden, intimate act. He looks up with determination, declaring that this bond has now connected their fates forever. Smiling confidently, he reveals this is the magic of reunion and vows to find her once he awakens. His voice fades with a final, desperate plea for her to wait for him as the vision completely dissolves. Adia wakes alone in her room, clutching her hand as the vivid memory of the dream lingers in the morning light. Tears well up in her eyes as the emotional weight of the encounter crashes down on her in the waking world. A scar remains on her hand where he touched her, standing as undeniable proof that the events were not just a dream. She realizes with a heavy heart that since that night, she has been completely unable to use the saint's power. Solitude wraps around her as she sits on her bed, contemplating the loss of her magic and the boy's lingering promise. Doubt creeps in as she considers that many years have passed, and the child may have already forgotten the dream entirely. She keeps the truth hidden, knowing her family would only mock her claims of using holy power within a dream. She clings to the hope that regaining her power could be her escape from suffering, but the path remains unclear. Her heart aches with a singular, desperate desire to see that child one last time. The scene shifts to a memory where Layla preens in a new dress, eagerly anticipating her birthday party. Adia stands silently in the background while her mother glares at her with cold, judgmental eyes. Her mother interrogates her, demanding to know why she looks so sullen despite the upcoming celebration for her sister. She accuses Adia of selfishness, suggesting she is jealous and secretly wants a birthday party for herself. The verbal abuse escalates as she calls Adia a greedy daughter for not solely focusing on her outstanding younger sister. She cruelly condemns Adia's nature as rotten to the core, declaring her a failure who has achieved absolutely nothing. Layla reassures her mother with a gentle touch, while the older woman validates a cruel decision, insisting it was the only right choice. Adia stands paralyzed by the conversation, her voice trembling as she asks the pair what they mean. The mother delivers a crushing blow, coldly stating that giving birth to Adia was a mistake. A sharp gasp escapes Adia's lips as the cruel words pierce her heart. Staggering backward in shock, Adia knocks an item from her dress, sending it clattering to the floor. The engagement brooch clatters onto the floorboards, landing near her shoe with a final, rejecting sound. A hand reaches down to claim the fallen heirloom, lifting the intricate jewelry from the ground. Layla preens before a mirror, declaring her dress the perfect choice while completely ignoring her sister's distress. Shadows distort Layla's features into a demonic grin as she clutches the stolen brooch against her chest. Adia's eyes widen in horror as the full weight of the betrayal begins to sink in. Layla flaunts the stolen jewelry, cruelly claiming that even the heirloom brooch has chosen her over Adia. With a final sneer, Layla calls her sister pitiful and turns her back on the devastation she caused. The scene shifts to a grand ballroom where the host announces the birthday celebration of the revered dream-interpreting saint. Guests listen as the host praises Layla for fulfilling her saintly duties despite her young age. Confused whispers ripple through the crowd as guests wonder why Lord Shihab stands beside Layla instead of Adia. A bystander gasps in realization as the scandalous implication of the pairing becomes clear. The speaker smiles broadly, preparing to deliver a second joyful announcement to the captivated audience. He formally introduces Lord Shihab Merapi alongside his daughter Layla, presenting them as a united pair. The crowd watches in shock as the host declares that Shihab and Layla are now officially engaged. The narration justifies the betrayal by claiming Adia's lack of holy power would only cause inconvenience to the prestigious family. Guests are told it is only natural for the prestigious Merapi lineage to seek a union with a true saintess. Shihab gazes affectionately at Layla, who returns his smile, sealing their public betrayal of Adia. Shihab coldly admits that he personally requested Layla's hand and initiated the break with Adia. Adia covers her face in anguish, unable to bear the sight of the man she loved discarding her so publicly. Her legs give way and she collapses to the floor, crushed by the weight of the betrayal. Adia trembles on the ground, agonizing over the cruelty of being humiliated in such a public setting. Shihab glares down at her, coldly stating that this public shame is exactly what she has inflicted on him for years. Adia looks up with tear-filled eyes, stunned by the venom in his unwarranted accusation. Shihab lists her failures, contrasting her lack of power with Layla's early success, and demands she recognize the shame he endured as her fiancé. He sneers at her helpless state, questioning if she truly believes she is capable of anything at all. Adia clenches her fist tightly against her dress, silently enduring the barrage of insults. Shihab delivers a final condescending blow, claiming his cruelty is merely for her own good. Shihab leans close to whisper a final cruelty, declaring Adia pitiful for being utterly abandoned by her own family. Adia stands frozen as the sharp lines of reality cut through her, leaving her isolated and defenseless against his words. She recalls Layla's jealous interrogation, asking if Adia clung to the fiancé position purely out of desperation. Layla's voice echoes from the past, complaining that Adia's engagement was merely an unfair result of birth order. The memory turns vicious as Layla sneers that her older sister is incapable of achieving anything on her own. Visions of the broken engagement brooch and shattered memories swirl in Adia's mind, illustrating the collapse of her world. A ragged gasp escapes her lips as the emotional impact leaves her unable to speak. Adia attempts to defend her dignity, insisting she worked tirelessly on her education and training as a fiancé. Her voice trembles with hurt as she asks why Layla would speak such cruel words to her own sister. Layla leans in with a dark glint in her eyes, asking if Adia knows the derogatory title people use for her. She delivers the insult with a smile, branding Adia as the useless saint, while towering over her. Layla giggles maliciously, finding amusement in reducing her sister to nothing. She taunts Adia for being lucky enough to be called a saint despite her total incompetence in everything else. A single tear splashes onto the ground, marking the shattering of Adia's composure. Adia stands isolated in the garden, the vibrant surroundings fading against the stark reality of her humiliation. She recalls seeing Layla flirt openly with Shihab in the gazebo, laughing and calling him funny while he smiled back. Shihab had smiled as Layla playfully chastised him, their easy banter highlighting Adia's exclusion. He readily agreed to a date just to appease Layla, discarding his duty to Adia without a second thought. Adia spirals into self-loathing, believing someone as useless as her has no right to wish for love. She buries her face in her hands, unable to hold back the flood of tears caused by her family's betrayal. A glowing memory of a hand piercing the darkness appears, offering a flicker of light in her despair. The boy's promise to meet again echoes in her mind, a stark contrast to the rejection she just faced. Hope mingles with sorrow on Adia's tear-streaked face as she clings to that singular memory. She realizes with a heavy heart that this distant promise is the only thing remaining in her life. The image of the boy kissing her hand fuels a desperate thought that becoming a true saint might make him notice her. Tears continue to fall, but the seed of determination begins to take root within her sorrow. Adia resolves that holding on to this hope is the only way she can survive this absolute despair. 3 years ago, a young Layla screams in defiance, refusing to study to become a saint because she hates it. Adia pleads with her sister, insisting she must learn everything about the saint's teachings, but Layla stubbornly claims she already knows enough. Layla throws a tantrum, stomping her foot and shouting that no matter how much she studies, she won't become a saint anyway. Adia tries to reason with her, calling out her name in a desperate attempt to calm the outburst. Layla turns her back on her sister, refusing to listen and pouting in childish rebellion. Later, Layla sits at the dining table hugging a stuffed animal, grumbling about not being allowed to eat first. Through the window, she spots Adia outside, diligently training under the watchful eye of their mother. Bubbles of sweat and magic surround Adia as she pushes herself, determined to master the skills expected of her. Layla watches with envy, complaining that her sister is inconsiderate for focusing on training instead of her. Despite the rigorous training expected of the eldest daughter at 13, it was Layla who began manifesting the saint's power at only 12. Adia collapses during practice, exhausted and overwhelmed by the pressure to succeed where she is failing. Layla glares out the window, her eyes filled with jealousy as she laments the unfairness of only Adia getting to become a saint. In a fit of spite, Layla decides that if she can't have the title, she will simply steal the power away from her sister. A mysterious, dark voice suddenly speaks from the stuffed animal Layla is clutching, offering to lend her its power. The voice instructs her to simply touch the power with her hands, promising an easy solution to her desires. Layla stares at the toy in confusion, asking what the voice means by its strange offer. The entity promises that if she can touch it, she will become special, tempting her with the very thing she craves. Adia enters the room, apologizing for making Layla wait too long, unaware of the sinister conversation that just took place. She notices Layla's teary eyes and immediately feels guilty, assuming her sister is crying from hunger and neglect. Adia rushes to comfort her, but Layla coldly rebukes her, complaining that her legs went numb from waiting. Adia gasps, noticing something strange about the stuffed animal Layla is holding tightly. She recognizes the toy from her own terrifying dream the night before, sparking a sudden realization. Layla feigns innocence, asking what's wrong, while Adia nervously asks to see the stuffed animal. Adia stares intently at the toy, sweat forming on her brow as she recalls the details of her nightmare. She remembers the danger associated with it and urgently asks Layla to lend it to her, suspecting a dream demon might be inside. Layla refuses, clutching the toy closer, but Adia begs her, fearing for her sister's safety. Layla silently observes her sister's reaction, realizing Adia has developed the ability to predict danger. She deduces that if Adia can sense the demon, then the entity's promise about stealing power must be true. A dark look crosses Layla's face as she grips her own wrist, fueled by hatred and jealousy. She suddenly lunges at Adia, pinning her down with a terrifying expression that completely sheds her innocent facade. Adia looks up in horror, stammering her sister's name as she struggles against the unexpected attack. Layla's eyes glow with malice as she declares the power is hers and she will never give it to Adia. With a final vow, Layla commits to stealing her sister's power, sealing her path into darkness. A hand clamps down hard on Adia's wrist, the grip bruising and unyielding as the struggle begins. Adia stumbles, her footing lost as she is forcefully shoved backward by the sudden aggression. She crashes to the floor, looking up in shock as Layla stands over her with a cold, triumphant posture. A close-up reveals the saint's crest glowing ominously within an eye, marking the transfer of power. Layla's expression twists into a terrifying, shadowy grin as she realizes she has successfully stolen the power of the saint. Adia sits bewildered, wondering if her power has suddenly disappeared, while Layla masks her malice with feigned concern about overpractice. Ignoring the taunt, Adiya desperately asks to see the stuffed toy, sensing the danger hidden within it. Layla refuses flatly, clutching the object of her dark pact tightly against her chest. Suddenly, Layla throws her head back and screams for their mother, staging a scene of victimhood to frame her sister. The mother rushes in as Layla lies, accusing Adiya of bullying her and trying to take her toy. Adiya stammers a denial, her voice trembling against the unjust accusation. Defeated by the manipulation, Adiya is forced to apologize to Layla, who hides her face to conceal her satisfaction. A smirk creeps onto Layla's hidden face, reveling in her sister's humiliation. From that day on, Layla greets her sister with a false smile while continuing to systematically drain the saint's power. She begins stealing Adiya's prophetic dreams, falsifying the source to claim the visions as her own achievements. Layla receives praise for preventing accidents based on the stolen information, cementing her reputation while Adiya fades into the background. As Layla rises, Adiya continues to lose more of her holy power, drained dry by her sister's greed. The ultimate betrayal arrives when Lord Shihab breaks his vow to Adiya and gets engaged to Layla instead. Adiya is trapped, forced to stay by Layla's side to fuel the stolen magic that rightfully belongs to her. Layla vows internally to never let her sister go, keeping her as a prisoner within the Merapi household. Years later, Shihab mocks Adiya, asking if she is pretending to be a maid because she has accepted her failure. Tears fill Adiya's eyes as she recalls the final, violent moment with her father. A flashback reveals her father shouting her name in anger as he physically strikes her for the broken engagement. She is thrown to the ground, her status as a noble daughter discarded along with her future. He coldly declares that since the engagement is broken, the useless girl has no place in the family anymore. To be of some use, he orders her to serve as Layla's maid, stripping her of her remaining dignity. Adiya clutches her chest in horror, unable to believe the cruelty of her fate. With no home to return to, she resigns herself to the humiliating reality of serving the sister who stole everything. Layla watches with a pitying sneer, mocking poor Adiya, as she fades into servitude. Back in the present, Shihab arrogantly assumes Adiya followed him to the Duke's household and chose his favorite tea just to win back his favor. Adiya denies his narcissism, her hand trembling as she refutes his twisted interpretation of her servitude. She stands silent and head bowed, trapping her protest inside as the cycle of humiliation continues. A teacup shatters on the floor, the dark liquid splashing outward like a bad omen amidst the porcelain shards. Layla glares at Adiya with a look of pure malice, her eyes wide and terrifying as she hisses a single insult, shameless. Shihab joins the verbal assault, sneering at Adiya for supposedly daring to use seductive looks despite being a mere maid. He turns his affection to Layla, reassuring her with a tender kiss on the forehead and declaring his exclusive love for her. Layla smirks with satisfaction, her eyes gleaming with triumph as she basks in Shihab's devotion. Adiya stands bewildered, internally questioning when she ever used seductive looks, completely confused by their accusations. Shihab suddenly produces an envelope, announcing that Adiya has received an invitation to a bride-seeking party. Layla reveals the suitor is the third prince of the Alger Empire, framing it as a wonderful opportunity with a deceptive smile. Adiya freezes in horror as the name sinks in, her eyes widening in recognition of the terrible reputation associated with him. The narrative identifies the suitor as the cursed prince, a figure shrouded in dread. He is introduced as Battle Ras Algar, the third prince possessing immense power, standing alone on a desolate cliff. Because of his extraordinary magic, he was cursed by a monster and fell into a deep, unending sleep. A close-up shows the prince lying in slumber, his hands clasped as if in eternal rest. Layla drops the facade, bluntly stating that the bride-seeking party is actually a search for a sacrifice to the cursed prince. Shihab coldly justifies the sacrifice, arguing that offering one noble could guarantee peace with the powerful kingdom of Algar. Adiya trembles, realizing she is being sent to her death under the guise of political duty. Shihab whispers cruelly into her ear, suggesting that this sacrifice is a way for her to clear the disgrace from their family's name. Adiya clutches her chest in terror, asking herself what will happen to a powerless girl like her in such a dangerous country. Shihab feigns regret, musing that Adiya wouldn't have to go if he hadn't broken their engagement, twisting the knife further. Adiya attempts to refuse, stammering a plea to Shihab, but he cuts her off dismissively. He callously mentions the prince's illness, implying that Adia's fate is already sealed regardless of her protests. With a cruel smile, he suggests that two filthy sick people might actually suit each other perfectly. Adia clutches the brooch at her chest, her knuckles turning white as she silently endures his degrading comments. Layla steps in, pointing a mocking finger at Adia and offering to heal her filthy illness with her stolen holy power. A hand reaches out, ostensibly to help, but the gesture is laden with threat and condescension. Adia recoils in fear, shouting that she is not dirty as she scrambles away from Layla's touch. Shihab immediately scolds Adia, demanding she apologize to Layla for rejecting what he claims was a simple act of kindness. Layla buries her face in Shihab's chest, playing the victim and complaining about always being made out to be the villain. Layla apologizes with fake tears, manipulating Shihab further while Adia watches helplessly. Hidden from Shihab's view, Layla smirks again, revealing the pure enjoyment she gets from tormenting her sister. She whispers to Adia that she will ensure she isn't chosen as a bride, framing it as an act of mercy to save her from a monster. Layla leans in close, gripping Adia's face and forcing her to beg for help, completing her absolute dominance over her sister. A hand roughly grabs Adia's chin, forcing her head up in a humiliating display of dominance. Layla shoves Adia to the floor with a violent push, sending her sprawling across the room as she screams. Adia collapses on the ground, looking up in shock as Layla towers over her with a cold, expectant gaze. Layla issues a degrading command, ordering her older sister to kneel and beg for mercy. A close-up reveals Layla's twisted smile as she relishes her power, demanding absolute submission. Shihab watches with amusement, affirming Layla's cruelty and encouraging the humiliation of his former fiancé. Adia clenches her fist against the floor, her knuckles white as she trembles with suppressed rage and helplessness. Swallowing her pride, Adia lowers her head to the ground, forced to plead for help from the sister who ruined her life. She begs internally, willing to face any terrible fate just to escape the suffocating torment of her current life. Layla smiles sweetly, promising to prepare a dress that suits her perfectly, a veiled insult masked as kindness. Guests whisper among themselves, curious if anyone has ever seen the mysterious third prince of the Alger Empire. Ladies gossip behind their fans, sharing rumors about the prince's terrifying reputation as a monster slayer. They describe him as a demon who cuts down beasts without mercy, painting a picture of a fearsome warrior. The crowd turns as Lord Shihab and Lady Layla arrive, sparking fresh waves of admiration and gossip. Bystanders comment on the prince's rumored beastly appearance, questioning if he is truly seeking a wife or just a sacrifice. Shihab and Layla beam at each other, presenting themselves as the perfect couple while the crowd swoons. Onlookers lament that the prince cannot compare to the beauty of Lord Shihab and Lady Layla, reinforcing the couple's social dominance. Adia walks behind them, her plain appearance drawing scathing criticism from the fashionable crowd. Whispers identify her as the talentless saint, a label that follows her like a shadow. The noble ladies scoff openly, their fans hiding sneers as they judge her worthlessness. Adia walks with her head down, internalizing the rejection and wishing she had been chosen as the sacrifice to end her misery. She stares at her feet moving through the grass, feeling completely displaced and unwanted in this world. Isolated in the spotlight of their disdain, she believes everyone would be happier if she simply disappeared. A sudden hush falls over the crowd as a new figure enters, drawing all eyes away from the golden couple. The third prince appears, his striking presence radiating a cold, terrifying beauty that silences the gossip. Guests gasp in awe, realizing the rumors were wrong and that he is even more beautiful than Lord Shihab. Adia watches him pass, unbothered by the prospect of going to the Empire if it means escaping her current hell. She notes his breathtaking beauty, a stark contrast to the monstrous reputation that preceded him. Yet, she senses a cold, terrifying aura that keeps people at a distance, a barrier of silence around him. Despite the fear he inspires, Adia feels a strange, inexplicable sense of nostalgia as she watches his back. An announcer calls for the marriage candidates to gather, pulling Adia out of her reverie. The prince glances back, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd with an unreadable expression. A foot shoots out from the crowd to hook Adia's ankle, executing a cruel and deliberate trip that sends her stumbling. The sudden obstruction catches her off guard, leaving her helpless to stop her fall. Adia crashes onto the grass with a pained cry, her hands scraping the ground as she sprawls before the onlookers. The sound of her distress draws the attention of the crowd, who watch her humiliation with cold indifference. A malicious giggle escapes Layla as she leans in, her eyes glinting with the satisfaction of seeing her sister on the ground. She revels in the moment, making no move to help, only adding to the silent mockery. Trembling with shame, Adia fights back tears and wishes desperately to escape, lamenting that she has to endure such torment. She thinks to herself that she just wants to go home, feeling utterly trapped in this hostile place. A commanding voice cuts through her despair as the third prince spots her amidst the crowd. He speaks with sudden intensity, declaring that he has finally located the one he sought. Ignoring the shocked bystanders, the prince strides purposefully across the grass toward the fallen girl. He comes to a halt directly in front of her, his presence looming large and protective. He gazes down at her with relief washing over his features, confessing that his long search has finally ended. The words carry the weight of a solemn vow fulfilled as he looks at her. To the astonishment of everyone watching, the prince lowers himself to one knee before the outcast Adia. He extends his hand to her with gentle reverence, offering aid where others offered only scorn. Adia stares back in bewilderment, unable to comprehend why this fearsome figure is looking at her with such tenderness. She wonders internally why his eyes hold so much kindness for someone like her. As their hands clasp, a brilliant burst of magical light erupts from the point of contact, startling them both. The energy surges visibly, marking their connection with undeniable power. The onlookers recoil in shock, shielding their eyes and gasping as they realize the blinding light is pouring from the prince and Adia. Disbelief ripples through the crowd as they question if this magic is truly coming from the two of them. Adia gazes at the swirling light in awe, the sensation triggering a deep recognition within her. She realizes with a start that this power is something she knows. Memories surface of a promise made across time, confirming that he has been searching for her all along. The magic acts as the seal of their reunion, proving their bond is destined. The prince's conviction solidifies as he looks into her eyes, confirming his gut feeling was correct. He knows now without a doubt that she is the person from his memories. A vow from the past echoes clearly in his mind, reminding him of his determination to find her the moment he woke. The memory aligns perfectly with the present, driving his actions. Overwhelmed with emotion, the prince confirms that his visions were reality, telling her she is the one who saved him. He looks at her with absolute certainty, validating her worth in a single sentence. Unable to hold back any longer, he pulls her into a desperate, embracing hug, burying his face in her hair. He whispers brokenly that he has wanted to see her for so long, finally bridging the distance between them. He holds her tight against his chest, savoring the warmth of the reunion while Adia melts into the embrace. The world around them fades away, leaving only the two of them wrapped in the safety of each other's arms. Zell reaches for a container on the table while Prince Battle suffers from lingering pain, prompting the attendant to note that headaches from the curse do not heal easily. Battle acknowledges the struggle but focuses on his progress, asking if they doubt him despite the pain. He declares that he has finally made it this far, his determination hardening against the lingering effects of the curse. A vision of a smiling girl fills his mind, serving as the driving force behind his relentless perseverance. The scene overlooks the holy kingdom of Mia, the last remaining religiously independent nation on the frontier. 3 years ago, a young Battle jolts awake in a cold sweat, gasping for air as he escapes a long nightmare. Attendants rush to his side as Prince Battle awakens, confused and disoriented about his whereabouts. Zell informs Battle that he was cursed by a dream demon and has been in a coma for a long time. Sudden pain strikes Battle's chest, causing him to clutch his heart and groan as the aftershocks hit him. He realizes he placed the magic of reunion on the woman in his dream, a spell that shares suffering and draws them together until they meet. Determined to find her, Battle declares he must go to her immediately and swings his legs out of bed. He sprints down the hallway while Zell chases after him, shouting for him to wait and explain. Battle comes to a sudden halt as a towering figure blocks his path, cutting off his escape. His father grabs his wrist firmly, demanding to know the meaning of this frantic commotion. Battle explains that the girl in his dream lifted the nightmare curse, and he must go see her immediately. The Emperor forbids him from leaving due to his uncontrolled magical power, but Battle vows to prove he can master it perfectly. His father orders Zell to keep an eye on him, and the attendant bows in obedient silence. Trees lie shattered and uprooted in the forest, evidence of a violent release of power during training. Battle stands amidst the wreckage he created, looking into a cave as he pushes his limits. A sharp headache strikes him again, forcing him to clutch his head in agony as the curse lingers. A monster lunges at him from the shadows with a beam of energy, capitalizing on his moment of weakness. Zell is perched in a tree above the fray, coolly remarking that the prince is being careless. Dropping to the ground, Zell scolds Battle for running off and making them search for him again. He hands over medicine, reminding Battle that his headaches are inevitable aftereffects of the nightmare demon's curse. Battle drinks the medicine and snaps at Zell to stay quiet and watch if he isn't going to help with the training. Zell questions why the prince is so obsessed with a girl he merely saw in his dreams. He argues that the emperor wants Battle to court a proper lady of status, not chase a phantom who might not exist. Zell stares intently, his expression unyielding behind his glasses as he challenges the prince's logic. A blast of magical energy grazes Zell's head, obliterating the tree behind him in an instant. Battle smirks at his shocked attendant, noting that Zell is also being careless. Zell stares in stunned silence, sweat running down his face as he realizes the precision of the attack. Internally, Zell marvels that Battle has achieved such difficult control over his immense power in such a short time. Zell questions the strange logic of the situation, noting that a girl with the power to break a nightmare curse should be highly valued instead of outcast. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he declares that he must go to her immediately to intervene. A dragon's eye snaps open in a sudden flash of intensity, marking a surge of awakened power and memory. Birds scatter frantically into the sky, fleeing the abrupt and overwhelming release of magical energy from the ground below. Battle unleashes a chilling warning to anyone standing in his path, commanding them not to get in his way. Zell is forced backward by the intense pressure, gritting his teeth as he struggles to withstand the shockwave. Staring into the storm of energy, he recognizes the terrifying signature of the power unfolding before him. He acknowledges with awe that he is witnessing the might of the strongest magic wielder in the entire empire. A memory surfaces of a younger Zell kneeling in absolute loyalty, pledging himself to his lord's command. Young Battle stands tall with his arms crossed, a confident smirk playing on his lips as he asserts his strength. Kneeling beside a defeated monster, Battle receives praise for his victory and the promise of a reward for his achievement. The emperor looks down from his throne with cold authority, commanding his son to state the wish he has earned. Battle confronts his father, asking if defeating the beast hasn't sufficiently proven his power and capability. The emperor issues an ultimatum, giving Battle until he turns 18 to find the girl from his dream or face a forced marriage. With no other option, Battle bows his head and submits to the deadline, accepting his father's terms. 3 years drift by as Battle endures the agonizing wait, counting the time since that pivotal agreement. He recalls the futile bride search parties held in other nations and his frustration at how long it took to gain entry permission. Standing on a balcony, Battle realizes everything was manipulated by his father and laments the obstinacy of the Holy Land. He gazes out at the isolated nation, bitter that even a closed country managed to reject the empire's influence. Clutching his hand, Battle winces as the mark pulses with pain, reminding him that he must find the girl quickly. An attendant announces Prince Battle's arrival, remarking with disdain that the country is just as they expected. The herald opens the door and informs them it is time, as everyone inside has been waiting for their entrance. Battle turns, his silhouette wreathed in a menacing aura of magical flame that flickers with his suppressed power. Zell nervously interrupts the intense display, apologizing for the intrusion as he urges his master to move. As they walk, Battle mutters darkly that if it weren't for the girl he seeks, he would have no patience for this country. Whispers spread through the crowd that the prince is diseased and resembles a terrifying devil. Noblewomen hide behind their fans, declaring they would rather die than marry him and trembling at his reputation. Battle dismisses the insults as a waste of time, though Zell is offended by the blatant disrespect shown to his master. The prince strides past the fearful guests, scoffing at their cowardice and dismissing them as mere country bumpkins. He resolves that this hostility is exactly why he must rescue her immediately, fully embracing his role as the third prince. The announcement booms across the hall, officially declaring the arrival of His Highness Bedelrus. The ladies in the crowd gasp and blush deeply, their fear instantly vanishing as they are stunned by his true appearance. Battle observes the women around him with disdain, noting that they flock to his power just like the dream demons he loathes. He stares down at a blushing girl with cold eyes, internalizing how sick their flattery makes him feel. Ignoring the commotion, Battle scans the area and wonders if the one he seeks is not there either. Suddenly he spots a girl collapsing on the ground, a solitary figure amidst the garden foliage. Layla and her companion mock the girl from behind, sneering at the useless saint who remains dull even in such a beautiful place. Battle watches the scene unfold, realizing with a dark expression that bullying is taking place here. He moves closer with silent intensity, his focus narrowing entirely on the girl on the ground. He is captivated by Adia's pure light blue hair and the delicate beauty of her face. Kneeling beside Adia, Battle gently asks how she is feeling, ignoring the stunned onlookers. The bullies freeze in terror as they recognize his attire and realize, "Your Highness," stands before them. Battle silences their confusion by declaring that Adia is the woman he is promised to. He pulls Adia into a warm embrace, confessing that she is the one who saved him and that he has always wanted to meet her. Adia rests her head against Battle's chest, overwhelmed by the sudden warmth and protection. With absolute conviction, Battle announces to the stunned crowd that she is his bride. The onlookers gasp in collective shock at the prince's sudden proclamation. Layla and the male noble stand paralyzed, their tea table nearly overturned in their haste. Layla trembles as the realization hits her that her mistreated sister is actually the imperial prince's fiancée. Her mind races with the fear that if Adia goes to the empire, her status will outrank even a marquis's wife. Desperate to stop this, Layla calls out to Prince Battle to intervene. She puts on a sickly sweet smile, asking if there hasn't been some kind of mistake regarding her sister. Layla venomously whispers that Adia acts weak on purpose to gain male sympathy, calling her a disgraceful woman. She insists she cannot hand over her sister, pointing out that Adia's ragged appearance is unfit to be next to his highness. Battle pulls Adia closer protectively while Layla internally cedes that Adia must remain her slave for life. The male noble steps in, agreeing that Adia's filthy clothes are disrespectful and demanding she come home immediately. Battle's eyes flash with lethal intensity as he commands them not to touch her. Adia stares up at him, stunned by his fierce defense of her. An immense wave of gravitational pressure crushes the surrounding nobles to the ground. Birds flee the trees in panic as the magical force distorts the very air around them. Layla and her companions are forced onto their hands and knees, unable to withstand the crushing weight. The male noble struggles to lift his head, grinding his teeth as he realizes the overwhelming strength of the man before him. Battle holds Adia gently amidst the chaos, asking if these are the ones responsible for her suffering. The observer realizes in terror that Battle is exerting precise control to crush everyone except Adia with his overwhelming magic. Layla's face twists in venomous rage as she shrieks at the prince, refusing to accept the situation and demanding to know if he is blaming them for Adia's suffering. Pointing an accusing finger, Layla viciously brands Adia a shameless fake and a failure who was dumped by her fiancé, screaming that a powerless girl is unfit for royalty. She leans in to mock Adia directly, sneering the label, "useless saint," into her face while the prince watches with a gaze that turns icy cold. Adia lowers her eyes and internalizes the abuse, admitting to herself that unlike in her dreams, she truly is powerless in this harsh reality. The prince interjects smoothly, questioning Layla's claim that Adia is powerless with a tone of dangerous curiosity that silences the immediate area. With infinite tenderness, Battle presses Adia's hand to his cheek, declaring to the stunned crowd that she is the one who saved him from the sleeping sickness. He displays the glowing mark on his finger as undeniable proof of their connection, leaving Adia blushing and the crowd murmuring in confusion. Layla snaps, calling the prince a fool and insisting he doesn't understand true magic, desperate to maintain her superiority over her sister. Ignoring the screeching noblewoman, Battle drops to one knee in the grass, treating Adia like the treasure he believes her to be and calling her a wonderful person. Zell watches in a cold sweat, realizing the prince is about to create a massive diplomatic incident by claiming a woman from a hostile nation. He stammers and tries to intervene, but his voice is cut short as the air around them grows heavy with magic. A hand lands on Zell's shoulder, physically stopping him from interfering as the prince asserts his will over his attendant. The prince's voice cuts through the tension, asking if they still do not understand the gravity of the situation while his aura exerts a crushing pressure. Zell finds himself immobilized by the sheer power radiating from his master, realizing with horror that he cannot move a muscle to stop this. Despite his immobilization, Zell shifts gears to support his master, coldly informing the locals that they have no right to speak directly to Lord Battle. His glasses glint menacingly as he warns that he will show no mercy to anyone who interferes, effectively silencing the room with a death threat. Zell clicks his tongue in frustration, resigned to cleaning up the mess his master is making while sweat drips down his face. Adia stares at the prince, her heart pounding as she wonders if he is truly serious about his words or if this is another dream. Memories of being called the powerless saint and worthless flood her thoughts, a lifetime of rejection making it hard for her to believe his kindness. Battle looks at her with softened eyes, admitting he doesn't know the details of her suffering but knowing one thing for sure. A vision of their shared dream overlays reality as he tells her simply that she saved him, confirming her worth to the world. He gazes deeply into her tear-filled eyes and vows that this time, he will be the one to save her from her torment. Gently, he asks for her name, noting that he hasn't had the chance to ask it properly yet despite their connection. He kisses her fingertips with reverence, calling her, my saint, and elevating her above all the mockery she has endured. Tears stream down her face as she introduces herself as Adia Sirios, the eldest daughter of the Count family, reclaiming her identity. A genuine smile breaks across Battle's face as he looks at her, the bond between them solidifying into something unbreakable. A squeal of shock erupts from the onlookers, breaking the romantic tension as the reality of the scandal sets in. Battle makes his official proclamation, declaring loud and clear that he will take Lady Adia Sirios as his bride. Zell looks on with a mixture of resignation and headache while Layla stares in horror at the turn of events. The prince beams at his new fiancée, his smile radiating a happiness that blinds the crowd to their objections and seals Adia's fate. Battle holds Adia close and formally declares once more that he, Battle Ras Algar, shall take Lady Adia Sirios as his bride. Adia stares up at him in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend that she is truly to be his bride. Tears well in her eyes as she tremulously asks him if this is really happening. Overwhelmed by the moment, she clenches her hands tightly in her lap. Battle affectionately presses his cheek against hers, closing his eyes in a moment of tenderness. He gazes deeply into her eyes and vows that he will never let her go again. Flustered by the intimacy, Adia pushes him back and stammering that he is too close. Battle is stunned, remarking that no one has ever spoken to him like that before. Adia covers her face with her hands and weeps tears of pure joy, exclaiming that she is so happy. Battle looks at her with softened eyes, moved by her confession that she wants him specifically, not just his status. She gazes up at him and fervently declares that he is her one and only. Zell interrupts the romantic atmosphere, sternly reminding the prince to restrain himself in front of the crowd. Adia realizes the public display and screams in sudden embarrassment. She frantically tries to push the prince away, begging him to let her go while Zell watches with a sharp gaze. Freed from his arms, Adia stands alone, panting heavily as she tries to compose herself. Battle immediately pulls her back into a tight embrace, explaining that his headache vanishes whenever he touches her. Zell attempts to interject again, his expression serious behind his glasses as he addresses the prince. He begins to analyze the situation, questioning the nature of the saint's power. Adia looks at them in confusion, unsure of what they are discussing. The conversation continues as Zell tries to explain the mechanics of her condition. Battle counters Adia's denial of her abilities, asserting that her divine power exists but is currently depleted. He reveals that upon touching her, he sensed she possesses a massive vessel capable of storing magic. His expression darkens as he concludes that someone has stolen her divine power. Adia stands frozen in shock, repeating the word, stolen, as the gravity of his words sinks in. Battle speculates on when exactly she lost her power, noting that her saintly abilities manifested faster than anyone in history. He raises a finger glowing with magical energy, proposing they use magic bestowal to verify her vessel. Adia is bewildered by the term, while Zell looks on with apprehension. Zell warns them that magic bestowal is a theoretical concept that carries significant risks. Adia swallows hard, nervousness evident as she prepares for what comes next. To everyone's surprise, she covers her mouth and stares at the magic with sparkling eyes, calling it amazing. Battle and Zell are left dumbfounded, staring blankly at her unexpected reaction. Battle expresses his disbelief that someone can actually perform the feat, as he had only read about it as a theoretical concept. Battle acknowledges Adia's hard work, validating that bestowing magic power is a complex feat requiring extensive study and effort through difficult days. Adia clasps her hands in determination, urging him to proceed quickly if he truly understands her readiness to accept the risk. Layla frantically interrupts the moment, feigning deep concern as she begs her sister to stop doing something so dangerous. Grabbing Adia's arm to physically stop her, Layla claims she has never even heard of a ritual called magic bestowal. She plays the role of the protective sibling, clasping her hands and pleading that she is only worried about Adia's safety. Internally, Layla panics at the threat to her position, realized that if this succeeds, everyone will discover Adia is the true saint. Desperation takes over as Layla mentally screams that she is the saint, terrified of losing her stolen status. A physical struggle ensues as Layla aggressively shoves her sister aside, using her body to physically block the transfer of power. Doubt ripples through the crowd as they whisper about Layla's ignorance, questioning if the supposed genius is actually a fraud for not knowing this magic. Adia stands silent amidst the trees, enduring the scrutiny while the crowd's murmurs grow louder around her. Having watched her sister for years, Adia realizes exactly what Layla is doing and understands the fear driving her actions. She knows Layla believes a talentless failure can accomplish nothing, and though the fake concern is cruel, Adia accepts the reality of her reputation. Adia clenches her fist at her side, the physical gesture betraying her internal struggle to push through the rejection. Memories surface of lonely hours spent in the library, surrounded by stacks of books as she desperately sought knowledge to prove herself. Shadowy figures from her past mock her efforts, laughing at the amateurish attempts of a saint who always fails. While Layla basked in the adoration of peers, Adia remained isolated on the ground, accustomed to being the outcast in the mud. The voices of the past echo with disdain, telling her not to get ahead of herself just because she holds a little knowledge. Back in the present, Adia trembles and thinks, "I knew it," expecting the cycle of rejection to continue as it always has. A cold, commanding voice cuts through the mockery as Battle tells the crowd to shut up, his eyes narrowing in dangerous anger. The gossiping noblewomen flinch in terror, silenced instantly by the prince's overwhelming presence and defense of Adia. Turning his back on the crowd, Battle focuses solely on Adia and tells her to ignore those around her. He looks her in the eye and asks the only question that matters, inquiring what she wants to do. Adia stares up at him with flushed cheeks, stunned to realize for the first time that someone is prioritizing her will. A smile graces Battle's lips as Adia recognizes that this person actually listens to her and values her input. Overwhelmed, she wipes away tears, finding strength in the fact that he does not deny her feelings or her worth. Adia swallows her fear, placing a hand over her heart as she steadies herself to make her choice. With a burst of courage, she shouts her desire to proceed, begging him to let her do it. She pants for breath after her outburst, waiting anxiously for his response in the sudden silence. Battle pulls her into a warm embrace, praising her decision with a satisfied smile and saying he understands. Zell watches the couple with a resigned expression while Battle beams, the bond between the prince and his saint undeniable. The narrator explains that magic bestowal is a high-level spell found only in the advanced textbooks of the Algar Empire. It is a high-risk technique unknown to ordinary people, involving the dangerous transfer of immense magic to someone with weak capacity. Zell explains that magic bestowal is a difficult process dependent on compatibility with the caster, questioning if the prince truly values her this much. Battle accepts the risk with a smile, while Adia eagerly volunteers, wanting to witness new magic and see if she can use holy power. Standing close behind her, Battle instructs Adia to close her eyes. He whispers for her to feel his presence and take a deep breath. Adia feels a sensation of protection as something hot and powerful sinks deep into her heart. The onlookers watch in silence as a magical aura begins to envelope Adia, while Layla lurks in the background with a darkened expression. Adia opens her eyes, stammering in shock as she feels the surge of energy within her. Battle commands, "Now," prompting her to look down at her glowing hands. He leans in close, whispering a challenge for her to show him her power. The vegetation around them reacts instantly, rustling violently under the pressure of the magic. A brilliant burst of light erupts from Adia, swirling around her in a blinding display of purification magic. The light intensifies, shooting upwards and scattering sparkles across the clearing. The noblewomen look up in awe as glittering particles of light rain down upon them from the sky. Shihab watches the spectacle with a captivated expression, blushing as the light reflects in his eyes. Battle observes with a satisfied smile, while Zell looks on in stunned silence at the success of the ritual. The ladies marvel that the air has cleared and their bodies feel lighter, wondering why they never realized Adia possessed such power. It becomes clear that Adia not only effortlessly accepted Battle's power but used it to purify everything using someone else's magic. Adia stares at her hands in disbelief, realizing that this immense purification is the true power of a saint. Suddenly, Layla clutches her chest in pain, gasping as a dark reaction hits her. She covers her eye in panic, realizing her stolen power is weakening and the situation has turned critical. Battle kisses Adia's hand tenderly, praising her by saying this is exactly as expected of his bride. He notes that even this display isn't her full potential, as the mark has always conveyed the depth of her pain to him. With renewed resolve, he invites her to come to his side immediately to rest and fully regain her sacred power. Desperate to shift the focus, Layla calls out to her fiancé, Shihab. But Shihab is entranced, staring at Adia with a flush on his cheeks. He wonders to himself when exactly Adia started shining so brightly, leaving Layla stunned by his distraction. Adia touches her face, glowing with a newfound radiance that captivates everyone around her. Shihab stammers as he tries to compose himself, mumbling about the purification power he just witnessed. He admits that the purification power from earlier was truly magnificent, unable to take his eyes off the scene. Layla's eyes widen in terror as she realizes she is losing control over both her power and her fiancé. Panic sets in as she thinks she must take Adia back, calling out for her sister to wait. Layla screams internally that she will lose her sacred power if Adia leaves, insisting they must return home to speak with their parents. Layla feigns deep concern, extending a hand to Adia and urging her to return home with her immediately. Battle internally vows never to send Adia back to a household that subjects her to such abuse. A look of twisted malice flashes across Layla's face as her plan begins to crumble before her eyes. Layla sweats nervously, mentally scrambling to deny the accusations of abuse against Adia's family. Playing the victim, Layla exclaims how cruel it is to suggest that she, a saint, would ever do such a thing. She reassures herself that everyone will believe her over her sister, just as they always have in the past. Layla's hand tightens painfully around Adia's arm, a physical manifestation of her desperation to maintain control. Battle smiles with dangerous confidence, pulling Adia close to protect her from her sister's grasp. Adia blushes and finds strength in his embrace, resolving that she is safe as long as he believes in her. Smoke rises from Layla's hand as the star-shaped emblem on her skin begins to turn black and fade 75. Panic sets in as Layla realizes her emblem is fading and she can no longer call upon her stolen power. The crowd whispers that given the abuse, it isn't surprising the family forced Adia to work as a maid for her ex-fiancé. Public opinion shifts rapidly as people question the morality of parents who allowed a younger sister to steal the older's fiancé. Layla stands frozen in horror, her eyes wide as the crowd's adoration turns into suspicion and judgment. Desperate for an ally, Layla reaches out to Shihab, calling his name as the situation spirals out of control. Shihab coldly turns his back on her, pulling his arm away from her grasping hand without a word. He walks away swiftly, abandoning his fiancée to save his own reputation in the face of the prince's wrath. Layla reaches out in disbelief, stunned that the man she stole has deserted her when she needs him most. She clutches at his sleeve and demands to know where he is going, unable to accept his retreat. Shihab shakes her off, deciding internally that it is best not to provoke a prince of the Algar Empire. He leaves Layla standing alone in the grass, completely severing his support as he walks out of the confrontation. Layla watches him go, her expression blank with the shock of total abandonment and public humiliation. The crowd's questions about how Battle and Adia met pierce the air, highlighting the stark contrast between the couples. Layla lowers her head, her shock turning into a seething resentment as she declares she will never forgive Adia. She internally rages that it is unfair for her elder sister to take away everything she worked so hard to obtain. With delusional conviction, Layla vows to herself that her elder sister's power belongs rightfully to her. The scene shifts to the guest palace of the Maya theocratic kingdom, where Battle escorts Adia to safety 92. A line of maids bows in greeting, welcoming Prince Battle back as he guides Adia into the luxurious hall. Battle presents a lavishly furnished bedroom to Adia, telling her to feel free to use it however she likes. Adia's eyes sparkle with wonder as she exclaims that she has never seen such a beautiful room before. She slumps onto the soft bed, relieved that she never has to return to the darkness of her room at home. Turning to Battle with a blush, she thanks him profusely for his kindness and the incredible accommodations. Battle pulls her into a gentle hug, whispering that he is simply glad she is pleased with the room. Internally, Battle is heartbroken that she is so moved by basic comfort, wondering what horrors she endured as a noblewoman. He calls for Zell, who steps forward immediately to receive his master's command. With a darkened expression, Battle orders Zell to investigate Adia's family and the abuse immediately. The scene opens at the grand estate of the Merapi market. A maid nervously informs a shocked Layla that Prince Battle has taken a liking to her sister. The servant delivers a startling message from Lord Shihab to the stunned noblewoman. Layla freezes in disbelief, unable to comprehend the words she has just heard. The setting shifts to a luxurious guest room within the state guest house of the Holy Kingdom of Mia. Zell informs Prince Battle that he has sent a message to the Emperor confirming the discovery of the bride. Battle introduces Zell as his attendant acting as a butler, instructing Adia to rely on him for anything. Zell scrutinizes Adia internally, determined to judge her worthiness since the prince is currently practically blind. Adia bows politely and introduces herself as Adia Sirios. A maid announces the bath is ready while Zell notes with approval that Adia's posture and behavior are surprisingly charming. Adia stands hesitantly before the smiling maid who waits to attend to her. The maid kindly invites her to take her time and relax in the bath. Adia follows the maid down the corridor, bathed in the light streaming through the arched windows. She observes the maid's uniform and notes it is distinct from those worn in the royal palace. Anxiety creeps in as she wonders if these servants are people who believe in Layla. Dark memories of past abuse surface, echoing the cruel taunts of being a useless saintess. The maid simply gestures for her to follow, dispelling Adia's immediate fears with professional courtesy. The maid presents a dress, explaining that Lord Battle instructed them to let her choose anything she likes. She adds that proper formal outfits will be custom-made for Adia later. Confronted with 10 everyday outfits, Adia stammers that she cannot possibly accept such generosity. The maid urges her to accept, surprised by a hesitation rarely seen in noble ladies. She emphasizes that Lord Battle arranged everything personally with Adia in mind. The maid advises her to accept it as a favor, noting that the prince never takes back his words. Adia finally relents and agrees to accept the gifts with a shy smile. In the bath chamber, the maid asks to see Adia's legs after hearing she had fallen. Adia reveals her knees, which are marred by fresh bruises and old scars. Realizing the rumors of abuse were true, the maid offers a magical ointment to fade the scars. As she applies the cream, the maid assures Adia that diligent use will heal her legs beautifully. Adia touches her face in shock as she witnesses the magic take effect. She stares in wonder, exclaiming that the result is truly amazing. Thrilled by the advanced magic of the Empire, Adia eagerly asks the maid to tell her more. The maid smiles and encourages her to just relax and make herself comfortable for now. A maid stammers nervously while attending to Adia, who is receiving a luxurious beauty treatment to prepare for her new life. Relaxing in the bath, Adia reflects on how long it has been since she felt safe, wondering if the wounds in her heart will fade like her old scars. She walks beside Prince Battle in the palace gardens, a comfortable silence settling between them as she enjoys the peaceful moment. Blushing deeply, Adia thanks the prince for the beautiful clothes, admitting it is the first time she has worn something so lovely. Suddenly insecure, she panics and apologizes, convinced that the fine attire doesn't suit her at all. Battle gently corrects her, smiling warmly as he confesses that she looks so beautiful he was completely captivated. Adia is overcome with shyness, fidgeting and stammering her thanks for his heartfelt compliment. Zell loudly clears his throat to interrupt the romantic atmosphere, reminding them of his presence and proper decorum. Ignoring the interruption, Battle asks Adia to drop the formalities and simply call him by his name. Adia hesitates at the breach of protocol, but Battle points out that he already calls her by her name. Blushing, he admits that he doesn't like being treated like a stranger by her, revealing his desire for closeness. Adia squeals internally, flustered by his directness and the sudden intimacy of his request. She gathers her courage and calls him Battle, causing his face to light up with a bright, joyful smile. Overwhelmed by his reaction, she thanks him again, her heart racing as the bond between them deepens. The prince steps closer, his dark cloak brushing against her dress as the distance between them vanishes. Suddenly, Battle loses his balance and collapses forward, catching Adia completely off guard as he falls. He lands softly on the couch with his head in her lap, his body going limp from exhaustion. Looking up with heavy eyes, he explains that his headaches vanish when he touches her and asks to rest for a moment. Adia realizes with a pang of guilt that he must have been suffering from the nightmare's effects even during the party. Examining his face closely, she notices his pale complexion and understands the depth of the pain he has been hiding. Watching him breathe heavily in his sleep, she is touched that he remained kind to her despite feeling so unwell. Maids gossip in the background, worried that the guest might feel inconvenienced being alone in the detached palace. Adia overhears them and wonders if there is something she can do to help everyone in return for their kindness. She resolves to bring even a little comfort to him, hoping her presence can ease his suffering. Zell arrives with a blanket, walking past the maids who watch with flushed faces as the atmosphere shifts. Battle sleeps deeply on the couch, the tension leaving his body as the magic cuff on his wrist glows faintly. Battle mumbles in his sleep, a blush on his cheeks as he murmurs that being by her side puts his heart at ease. Adia clasps her hands in prayer over his sleeping form, her expression tender as she watches over him. She smiles with relief, noting that his complexion looks a little better now that he is finally resting. Zell places a hand on his chest and offers his deepest apologies for the burden placed on her. He explains that the prince has suffered from severe insomnia for a long time and asks if she would allow him to rest a bit longer. Adia readily agrees, realizing with heartache that he must be terrified of falling asleep because of the nightmares. Battle sleeps peacefully as a hand strokes his hair, the narration revealing he was once trapped in a nightmare created by a dream demon. A gentle voice wishes him sweet dreams as the darkness fades into a tranquil rest. In the present, Zell observes his master with a satisfied smile while magical light sparkles outside the carriage windows. Adia gazes out at the glittering particles, her hair blowing softly in the magical breeze. She wonders with a mix of hope and anxiety if these peaceful days will truly continue once they reach the Empire. Battle sits at his desk looking visibly refreshed from his deep sleep, ordering Zell to begin his report. Zell reveals that while tending to Adia's recent fall, he discovered numerous old scars marring her legs. He adds that Adia showed extreme wariness toward the servants, reacting with fear rather than authority. A flashback shows Adia flinching violently when a maid simply approached her to offer assistance. She quickly tried to hide her fear, stammering a denial to the concerned servant to avoid trouble. Instead of asking for help, Adia humbly asked to borrow soap so she could wash and dry her own clothes by morning. Zell concludes that her simple clothing and behavior indicate she was forced to perform servants' chores herself. Battle's expression darkens into a terrifying scowl as the reality of her abuse sinks in. Burning with rage, he declares that the evil of Count Sirios must be eradicated. The scene shifts to the Sirios' residence where maids nervously serve dinner to Layla and her parents. Layla's parents cheerfully welcome her back, expressing surprise that Adia was chosen as the prince's bride. Her mother talks of thanking the Marquis of Merapi, oblivious to Layla's growing fury at the table. Layla grips her fork tightly, furious that Shihab cast her aside and refusing to feel any gratitude. In her agitation, she knocks her silverware off the table with a loud clatter. Glaring at a trembling maid, Layla instinctively commands Adia to pick it up. She catches herself with a twisted expression, muttering that she doesn't have a sister while clutching a knife. Layla deliberately cuts her own finger, crying out in feigned pain to start a scene. Without warning, she slaps the maid across the face, causing the servant to scream in shock. Layla immediately plays the victim, sobbing that her sister would never have been so clumsy while calling the maid a fool. Turning to her confused parents, she manipulatively asks if they are lonely because her sisters suddenly disappeared. Internally, she finds the act irritating, biting her thumb as she reminds herself that a crown princess must endure unpleasant things. She stares at the fading mark on her hand, calculating her next move. Layla realizes her dream demon power is nearly exhausted and can no longer sustain long-term control over others. Looking at her smiling parents, she knows she cannot forcibly move them without expending more magic. Regretting her earlier waste of power, she resolves to win her parents' cooperation through manipulation to get her sister back. She puts on a fearful face, whispering rumors that the Empire is a terrifying place. Clasping her hands in fake prayer, Layla cries out that she is terribly worried about her sister being taken there. A sudden idea strikes Layla, prompting her to exclaim to her father that she has found the solution to their predicament. She proposes petitioning the king to return Adia, arguing that her incompetent sister would only become a laughingstock and is an unsuitable match for royalty. Her father agrees with a thoughtful expression, seeing the merit in reclaiming the family's asset. Greed takes over as the parents fantasize about the reward, the father suggesting they ask the king to elevate him to a marquis for his trouble. Layla's expression darkens with determination as she calculates the next steps of her scheme. She urges her parents to act immediately and present their request to His Majesty without delay. Internally, Layla burns with jealousy, thinking that she should be the one at the palace instead of her sister. She convinces herself that once Adia returns to their house, they can resolve things, envisioning her sister trapped in their control. The ultimate goal is clear in her mind. She must ensure by any means necessary that Adia does not become the prince's consort. She seeks validation from her parents, asking if they agree with her assessment of the situation. A chilling smile spreads across her face as she revels in the brilliance of her malicious plan. A dark, spectral vision of Layla wraps around Adia, symbolizing her intent to consume her sister's happiness and steal her light. Layla claps her hands together, announcing her strategy to hold a farewell party as the perfect trap. She explains that they will frame it as a final family gathering to collect belongings, instructing the parents to have Adia ask the prince directly. The parents embrace the idea, realizing the party will serve as a public relations stunt to clear up rumors of them mistreating Adia. They decide to formally request a meeting with Adia the very next day to set their plan in motion. Layla clutches the fading emblem on her chest, vowing internally that she will not let her sister become the prince's consort. She stares obsessively at the thought of Adia's magic, delusionally asserting that her elder sister's power belongs rightfully to her. Consumed by envy, she declares she will never hand Adia, or the power she carries, over to anyone else. Unaware of the plotting back home, Adia gazes sorrowfully out of a palace window, watching the rain fall in silence. A carriage rumbles through the heavy downpour, water splashing violently as it halts before the estate. Adia stares out the window with a look of dread, recognizing the vehicle through the curtain of rain. Battle confirms her fears by identifying the carriage as belonging to her family, causing her to press her hand against the glass. He holds her close in a protective embrace, offering silent strength as she trembles against him. Zell announces the arrival of an uninvited guest as a dark figure steps out into the storm. The grand hall erupts into chaos as Adia's parents barge in, screaming and demanding to know where she is. They arrogantly proclaim themselves the crown prince's parents and threaten the servants who try to block their path. Battle and Adia appear at the top of the stairs, the prince looking down with cold annoyance at the scene below. The countess immediately feigns maternal concern, claiming she was worried sick when Adia didn't return home. Battle coldly interrupts their act, revealing that he is the one who ordered Adia to be brought to him. The count quickly pivots, apologizing for his daughter's selfishness and insisting they must take her home to discipline her. Battle watches them with a flat stare, noting internally that they are completely ignoring his words and authority. He openly condemns them, stating that they are clearly the kind of parents who would abuse their own daughter. The parents gasp in feigned shock, accusing the prince of being an impostor for his lack of propriety. With a sharp, decisive gesture, Battle signals his attendants to end the farce. Zell and the servants immediately seize the parents, obeying the command to throw the intruders out. The count struggles indignantly against the servant's grip, screaming that this is a misunderstanding and citing his rank. Desperate, the countess begs for just one moment to say a final goodbye to their precious daughter. Battle mocks their sudden affection, pointing out the contradiction between their words and the abuse Adia suffered. The mother insists their harsh treatment was merely strict guidance to help Adia become a proper saint. Adia is plunged into a dark memory of her mother telling her that giving birth to her was a mistake. The flashback continues with her parents calling her a disgrace and lamenting the shame of having her as an eldest daughter. She recalls being reduced to a servant, ordered to work as a maid for her sister Layla's wedding. The final blow in the memory is her father casting her aside, declaring she has no place there after her engagement was annulled. Back in the present, Adia clutches her chest in pain, wondering if such cruelty could ever be twisted into love. Her parents cling to the railing, gaslighting her with claims that they didn't realize she was hurt and that they love her. They plead with her to come home just once to celebrate as a family before she leaves for the Empire forever. Adia trembles visibly before lowering her hand and quietly whispering that she understands. She shocks everyone by announcing that she will return home once, stepping down towards her parents. Battle watches her with intense concern, his expression tightening at her unexpected decision. He immediately steps forward to join her, declaring firmly that he will accompany her as well. The count scowls internally, realizing his plan to isolate Adia will be difficult with the prince sticking so close to her. Adia's father manipulates her with a somber expression, claiming their home is too humble for the prince and begging for a final, private family gathering. A vision of a happy family fills Adia's mind as she admits to herself that she has always desperately wanted to be loved by them. She watches the backs of her parents and sister walking ahead of her, symbolizing the emotional distance she has always felt despite her longing. Hope blooms in her chest as she convinces herself that this might be her last chance to finally reconcile and hear their true feelings. Turning to Battle, she asks to go alone, reasoning that she doesn't want him to witness the shameful weakness of her family bond. Adia looks up at him with pleading eyes, silently begging him to trust her judgment on this personal matter. Battle gazes back with deep concern, his expression softening as he sees the desperation in her face. Reluctantly, he agrees to her request, deciding to respect her wish to handle her family by herself. A close-up of Battle's eyes reveals his lingering worry as he watches her prepare to leave his side. Zell bows respectfully in the background, accepting the decision to let Adia proceed without the prince's direct protection. Adia strengthens her resolve, telling herself she wants to believe in them one last time because they are her blood. The scene shifts abruptly to a lavish ballroom filled with gossiping nobles, shattering the promise of a private gathering. Zell stands quietly in the crowd, his sharp eyes observing the spectacle from behind his glasses. Adia confronts her father, confused and hurt, asking wasn't this supposed to be a quiet family celebration. Her father brushes off her concern, claiming so many people wanted to greet her that a party was the quicker solution. He casually mentions that Lord Shihab is present, adding another layer of discomfort to the ambush. Adia looks around anxiously and asks where Layla is, noticing her sister's suspicious absence. Her mother smiles coldly and dismisses the question with a vague, "Who knows?" offering no comfort. Adia sweats nervously, trapped between her parents as the reality of their deception sinks in. Ignoring her distress, her father pushes her toward the crowd, insisting that she greet everyone as the main guest. The doors open wide to reveal the waiting audience, signaling the start of the public performance. Her father announces her to the room as Adia, the prince's future wife, boldly staking a claim on her new status. Adia panics and protests, whispering frantically that nothing has been officially decided yet. Her father silences her with a hiss, claiming the prince loves her too much to call it off now. The crowd buzzes with excitement while her father commands her to stop embarrassing herself and act with dignity. Adia flinches visibly, the joy of her reunion with Battle tainted by her parents' greed and manipulation. Her parents flank her like jailers, their smiles fake as they present the picture of a united, successful family. Adia stands trembling in her beautiful dress, isolated and trapped in the spotlight she never wanted. Leaning in close, they whisper a threat, ordering her to suppress any disgraceful rumors about the family abuse. Her father loudly lies to the guests, claiming Adia thanked him for her strict discipline, and that he was moved to tears. The parents laugh haughtily, basking in the congratulations of the crowd while taking credit for Adia's success. Guests praise the parental love shown by the feast, completely deceived by the parents' performance of loneliness and care. Adia stares at the feast before her, noting with resignation that every dish, from the chicken to the cake, is Layla's favorite rather than hers. She stands in a dress she didn't choose, realizing her parents never cared for her preferences and only valued the title of princess consort she now holds. Adia uncomfortably asks them to stop using her title, but her father dismisses the plea, solicitously noting that the princess consort must be tired. Her parents switch tactics to a cloying warmth, insisting that despite her new status, she remains their daughter and there is no need for formality. Layla eats with aggressive, jagged movements beside her, while Adia sits in tense silence and barely touches her food. The count finally reveals his true motive, declaring that their current rank is unsuitable for the in-laws of royalty before asking Adia for a favor. He blatantly demands that Adia use her influence to convince Prince Battle to elevate their family to the rank of Marquis. Her mother chimes in with a manipulative smile, confident that the prince will grant the request because he is supposedly crazy about Adia. Adia is stunned by the absurdity of the request, knowing that interfering in the Holy Kingdom's internal affairs is politically impossible. The count presses on, arguing that even their king could not refuse a request coming directly from a prince of the Algar Empire. Adia clutches her dress in distress, appalled by her parents' shameless attempt to exploit her position for their own gain. Her father frames his greed as paternal concern, claiming she will suffer in the empire with a low-status family, leaving Adia in disbelief. They continue to gaslight her, insisting that elevated status is her only protection in the terrifying empire since they cannot be there to watch over her. A cold realization washes over Adia as she stares blankly ahead, finally understanding that her parents possess no genuine worry for her well-being. She accepts the painful truth that they view her solely as a tool to elevate their own social standing. Adia bites her lip to suppress her emotions, her expression hardening as she prepares to cut ties. Abruptly standing up from the table, Adia excuses herself to return to her room, unable to bear their presence any longer. As she leaves, her parents immediately revert to criticism, loudly lamenting her weak will and doubting her ability to serve as a prince's wife. Layla smirks in satisfaction, readily agreeing with their disparaging remarks as she watches her sister retreat. Adia closes the heavy door behind her, leaning against the wood as the voices of her family represent a life she is leaving behind. Sliding down to the floor, she curls into a ball and weeps for the childhood dream of parental love that she must finally abandon. The final illusion shatters as she acknowledges that every action they ever took was calculated solely for their own benefit. Wiping her tears with newfound resolve, Adia decides to pack her belongings immediately and flee this house at first light. She enters her room to find it barren, containing only a few books and the absolute minimum furniture required for habitation. She realizes with a pang of bitterness that every gift ever given to her by her parents or Lord Shihab has already been stolen by Layla. Searching the sparse shelves, her hands land on a small book tucked away in the shadows. She pulls out the mysterious book she doesn't recall owning, staring at the cover in confusion. As she opens the object, she discovers a reflective surface inside and finds herself gazing into a mirror. A dark, ominous aura swirls within the glass as she stares into her own reflection, sensing something unnatural. Horror strikes as she recognizes the dark energy, realizing that a nightmare demon is trapped within the object. The floor beneath her suddenly liquefies into a pool of darkness, ripples spreading outward as the magic activates. Shadowy tendrils shoot up from the abyss, wrapping tightly around her leg to drag her down into the nightmare realm. A look of horror flashes across Adia's face as she realizes something is terribly wrong with her abilities. She tries to summon her divine power but finds it unresponsive, leaving her defenseless in the face of danger. Panic sets in as she wonders if her strength is being drained, desperately trying to call upon the remnants of battle's magic. Her body feels weak and heavy, and she stumbles, realizing she is rapidly losing her connection to the magic. Collapsing to the floor, she cries out for help, her voice trembling with fear as a shadowy figure approaches. A dark, towering silhouette looms over her, its presence suffocating and terrifying as it corners her. Adia recognizes the figure as Layla and calls her name, begging for help against the nightmare demon she believes is attacking. Layla smirks cruelly, mocking Adia's helplessness and asking why she doesn't just use her power to save herself. She taunts Adia, calling her a useless saint who can't do anything on her own without battle's power to prop her up. Layla reveals the truth with a twisted smile, declaring that the nightmare demon is not an enemy but a god who grants her power. A dark, corrupted energy swirls around Layla's hand as the stolen emblem glows ominously on her skin. Adia stares in shock at the emblem on Layla's hand, realizing with horror that the power of the saint has returned to her sister. Layla revels in her victory, calling Adia pitiful for being born a saint yet losing her powers so easily. She looks down at Adia crawling on the ground, sneering at how disgraceful she looks in her desperation. With a vicious kick, Layla sends Adia sprawling across the floor, physically asserting her dominance. Adia gasps in pain, clutching her side as she tries to comprehend the betrayal and the loss of her power. Layla steps on Adia, pinning her down with her foot and accusing her of seducing Lord Shihab and stealing everything. She screams that Adia is a wretched woman for thinking she could become the prince's consort after ruining Layla's life. Adia cries out in denial, sobbing that she never did such a thing and begging Layla to stop. Layla ignores her pleas, ranting about how Adia got her kicked out of the Merapi family house and stole her future. A flashback shows Shihab watching Adia from afar, his face flushing as he realizes how radiant she has become. Layla screams that it is all Adia's fault, blaming her sister for her own failures and the loss of Shihab's affection. Tears stream down Layla's face as she accuses Adia of always stealing what belongs to her, her envy consuming her completely. She vows to never let Adia go to the empire or become the prince's consort, determined to destroy her happiness. Layla declares that Adia has a responsibility to give her power to her, claiming it is the only way to restore her status. With a terrifying, insane grin, Layla asserts that Adia's power will always belong to her and no one else. Adia lies broken on the ground, whispering a desperate plea for help into the darkness. As her consciousness fades, she screams Battle's name with the last of her strength, hoping against hope that he will hear her. Layla clutches the magical seal with a twisted grin, proclaiming that from now on, her sister's power will belong to her. Sinking into the darkness, Adia cries out for someone to help her as the shadows swallow her whole. As her consciousness fades in the void, she desperately calls out Battle's name one last time. A deafening crash echoes through the nightmare realm as a massive force smashes through the barrier from the outside. Adia's eyes widen in shock as she witnesses the impossible intrusion into her despair. Battle bursts onto the scene, shattering the magical construct like glass as he lands with devastating force. Layla freezes in terror, her eyes bulging as the prince she feared suddenly materializes before her. He rushes past the enemy to shield Adia, placing himself firmly between the sisters. A look of pure, unadulterated murderous rage darkens Battle's face as he locks eyes with Layla. Layla cowers under his glare, paralyzed by the overwhelming killing intent radiating from him. Without a word, Battle swings his blade down to execute the woman who tormented his bride. Adia screams in horror, realizing he intends to kill her sister right in front of her. Battle clicks his tongue in frustration as his strike is forcibly halted mid-swing. Adia has thrown herself onto him, gripping his arm with all her strength to stop the fatal blow. She screams for him to stop, her voice desperate and pleading in the tense silence. The sword hovers dangerously close to Layla's neck, held back only by Adia's intervention. Battle demands to know why she is stopping him, reminding her that this woman is the one who hurt her so badly. Adia trembles under his gaze, unable to deny the truth but refusing to let the blade fall. Layla remains on the floor, shaking uncontrollably as death looms inches away. Battle glares down with cold eyes, his patience wearing thin as he maintains his lethal stance. He holds the sword steady, the tip threatening to pierce Layla's throat as she quivers in fear. He warns Adia that showing mercy to someone like Layla will ultimately bring her no good. Battle insists that people like Layla will never change and will just keep hurting her again and again. Adia lowers her head, quietly acknowledging his words with a heavy heart. She looks up at him with teary eyes, refusing to let him become a murderer for her sake. Battle stares back, his expression softening slightly as he waits for her reasoning. She confesses that despite everything, she cannot let him kill her because she is her only sister. Battle sighs and sheathes his anger, reaching out to gently touch Adia's face in a moment of respite. Suddenly, dark tendrils shoot up from the abyss, wrapping tightly around Battle's leg in a sneak attack. A massive burst of magical energy explodes outward as the nightmare realm retaliates against the intruder. Battle grunts in pain as the shadows drag him down, his strength failing against the surprise attack. Adia screams his name in terror as he is pulled into the abyss, the ground swallowing him up before her eyes. The sister identifies the affliction as sleeping sickness and calls out to Adia with a sinister, mocking tone. She manipulates Adia emotionally, asking why she tries to leave despite their bond as sisters. The twisted girl demands a solemn promise that Adia will never leave her side again. She issues a cruel ultimatum, offering to spare Prince Battle's life only if her demands are fully met. With a warped smile, she offers forgiveness for past hurts if Adia agrees to the terms right now. The threat hangs heavy in the air as she asks if Adia is truly willing to let Battle die. A single tear tracks down Adia's cheek as the weight of the impossible choice crushes her spirit. A brilliant light erupts as Adia clasps Battle's hands, defying the darkness with a sudden surge of resolve. The sister panics, realizing Adia is attempting a magic transfer to fuel Battle's power against the curse. While the sister shrieks that only a high saint can exorcise a nightmare demon, Battle urges Adia to believe in her power. Adia's face hardens with determination as she begins to declare her true identity amidst the storm. Bathed in shards of light, Adia vows that she will never give up again. The magic takes hold, and life rushes back into Battle as the dark curse is driven from his body. The sister stares in disbelief, stammering as she struggles to accept the impossible sight. She trembles in shock, unable to comprehend that Adia is successfully exorcising a nightmare demon. As the sister watches in horror, Adia stands revealed in a blinding pillar of holy light. The mark of the saint manifests clearly in Adia's eye, proving her lineage beyond any doubt. Adia is revealed to be the first grand saint to appear in 100 years. The sister collapses in defeat, bitterly asking why she wasn't the one chosen for such power. Battle tenderly touches Adia's face, praising her for her incredible victory. The younger sister weeps, complaining that it is unfair how the big sister always gets everything. Adia's parents burst into the room, shouting about the rudeness of the sudden commotion. Their anger turns to frozen shock as they take in the scene before them. The parents rush forward but skid to a halt, their faces pale with sudden realization. They stammer in confusion, demanding to know what Prince Battle is doing there. Battle holds Adia close as the parents question his presence in Adia's room. Battle glares coldly, stating that woman dared to lay a hand on Adia. He declares that harming the woman who will become the crown prince's consort is a grave crime. The parents shriek in terror as the gravity of their situation crashes down on them. They immediately drop to the floor in a deep bow, begging profusely for forgiveness. Desperate to save themselves, they offer to lock the younger sister in the underground prison, shocking her. The sister screams in horror as she realizes her family is sacrificing her to the dungeon to appease the prince. Layla snaps under the pressure and screams at her sister to shut up, unable to accept her defeat. The count explodes with rage, turning on his favorite daughter and bellowing that she is an ungrateful child. He furiously asks if she understands the gravity of the situation, accusing her of trying to get the whole family executed. Desperate to save himself, the father violently grabs Layla's hair and forces her head down to make her apologize. Layla grits her teeth in humiliation as her head is shoved toward the floor by the very parent who once spoiled her. The parents prostrate themselves in a pathetic display of submission while Adia watches the scene in silence. Adia trembles at the sight, but a gentle hand rests upon her head to steady her. Battle strokes her hair, offering silent comfort as she processes the crumbling of her family dynamic. The prince glares coldly at the groveling parents, disgusted that they care more about saving their own skins than their daughter. Adia looks up with teary eyes, realizing the depth of their selfishness and the finality of this moment. Battle announces that he will spare their lives solely because it is Adia's request. The parents remain bowed in relief while Battle keeps a protective hand on Adia's head. As the couple leaves the room, the shameless parents call out their thanks, ignorant of their permanent severance. Adia steps forward, her shoes clicking on the floor as she turns her back on her old life. Once they are alone, Battle pulls her into a warm embrace and praises her for doing well. Adia begins to weep, apologizing for the trouble she caused, but Battle gently tells her not to say anything. He presses his forehead to hers, flushing slightly as the atmosphere turns tender and reassuring. Battle turns to lead her away, telling her to leave the rest to him. He informs Cell with a smile that Adia has fully awakened as the Grand Saintess. They walk down the corridor as Battle orders the news spread to restore Adia's status in the Holy Nation. Zell confirms that the investigation into the abuse is complete and the evidence has already been submitted. The scene shifts to a cold, iron-barred cell where Layla sits in disgrace. She screams to be let out, horrified by the filth, while her parents stand impassively on the other side. Layla grips the bars and begs her mother for help, her eyes wide with desperation. The Countess coldly orders the guards to lock it up tight and ensure Layla never appears before Adia again. Panic consumes Layla as she shrieks for her mother, realizing she is being abandoned. The mother's face remains stony and devoid of affection as she turns away from the cell. She delivers the final blow, repeating the curse that giving birth to Layla was a mistake. Layla's hand reaches out futilely through the bars as the light begins to fade. The heavy dungeon door slams shut, sealing her fate in darkness. A twisted smile creeps onto Layla's face in the shadows as her mind finally snaps. Alone in the dark, she whispers a deranged verdict into the void, echoing the cruelty she once dealt. The imprisoned sister grins darkly, realizing she is now being treated like a monster by her own family. She finds herself trapped in the Chamber of Seals, a dungeon filled with relics of monsters sealed by past saintesses. Magical chains glow faintly in the darkness, barely containing the ancient evils locked away within the cell. Huddled in despair, she realizes that her father will likely abandon her to execution just to save himself. Her eyes go cold and lifeless, shedding all hope as resentment takes root in her heart. She touches her cheek, feeling the absence of the power she once wielded as her situation sinks in. Staring at her empty hand, she notes that the saint's crest has vanished and the nightmare demon's voice is silent. Her gaze shifts to the chains binding a massive crate, her mind racing with a destructive epiphany. Deep within a barred cell, a massive, sealed monstrosity waits, its presence looming behind the iron bars. She stands up with her back to the viewer, the wind blowing her hair as she makes a final, fatal decision. The prisoner is revealed to be a terrifying demon, watching her through the bars as the seals begin to weaken. A jagged, predatory grin stretches across a face, signaling the malicious intent to unleash chaos. She decides that if they treat her like a monster, she will become exactly the nightmare they fear. With a violent snap, she crushes the chains in her hands, physically breaking the seal that holds the beast back. Her mind flashes back to Adia, recalling with jealousy how beautiful her sister looked in her moment of victory. The memory of Adia's sorrowful face lingers, haunting her even as she commits to her path of destruction. She complains that it is unfair, lamenting that her big sister always gets everything while she is left with nothing. Staring into the monster's cage, she chills the air by asking if her sister will forgive her for this final betrayal too. Several days after the attack, the prince and Adia walk through a field of poppies, admiring the beautiful scenery. He asks gently if the peaceful walk has helped her feel a little better. Looking at her with concern, he acknowledges that she went through something awful recently. Adia looks away with a somber expression, quietly confirming his words. He assures her that his magic has stabilized thanks to Lord Battle and urges her not to push herself. A messenger interrupts to report bad news from the holy nation of Maina regarding a certain matter. The prince decides to step away to handle the issue, telling Adia to rest for a while. Adia smiles and waves him off as he departs into the distance. A sudden gust of wind sweeps across the field, rustling the poppies ominously. Adia's vision blurs, and she stammers that she cannot see anything. Heavy footsteps crush the delicate flowers as someone approaches from behind. Thinking the prince returned, she asks Lord Battle if he forgot something. The figure stands still and calls out her name in a flat tone. He declares that he has come to pick her up. Adia clutches her chest, sensing that something feels terribly off. He insists they go together, emitting an intense pressure that alarms her. A slit pupil snaps open, revealing a monstrous eye hidden beneath the disguise. Adia freezes in terror as she realizes the truth behind the gaze. She backs away, noting that his movements are jerky and wrong. He complains that his body isn't moving properly as he lurches toward her. A twisted grin splits his face as he hisses, "My saint." He lunges and grabs her arm, causing her to scream for him to stop and let go. Gripping her tightly, he whispers that he will not let her escape. A sharp sound rings out as the magical disguise begins to crack. Adia shouts, "Who are you?" as the illusion shatters around the imposter. She screams that Lord Battle would never be so violent, exposing the fraud. The figure stands silently as the last of the disguise fades away. The voice changes, commending her for figuring it out so quickly. Layla reveals herself with a mocking smile, greeting her sister with twisted affection. Her expression darkens as she tells Adia to simply forget about this painful reality. Adia watches in horror as Layla offers to show her a happy dream instead. The truth is revealed. Layla has broken the seal on Morpheus, the spirit who feeds on nightmares. A sinister entity possessing the prince reveals that it fell into the hands of a dream demon long ago and was sealed away as a monster. The demon mocks Adia's hesitation, warning that even the great saint barely managed to seal him and she stands no chance of exorcising him now. Adia trembles, overwhelmed by the horror of hearing the monster speak with the exact same voice as her beloved Lord Battle. He leans in close to sniff her neck, whispering terrifyingly that she smells nice. His tongue flicks out as he savors her scent, declaring with a predatory grin that she is delicious as expected. The demon revels in her reaction, his eyes glowing with malice as he feasts upon the saint's fear. He presses against her, proclaiming his desire to eat even more of her spiritual energy. Memories of suffering flash through Adia's mind as she stammers a desperate plea for him to stop. The demon whispers cruel manipulations, claiming that if she stays here she will only be thrown away by people who do not love her. He extends a hand, inviting her to abandon this reality and come with him instead. He promises to take her to a place without pain, trying to seduce her into surrendering her will. He offers her a happy dream world, a tempting illusion of perfect peace. Adia wonders if her family would have loved her in such a place, momentarily captivated by the idea of a world without pain. She imagines a reality where her hard training paid off and she was successfully recognized as a saint. In this fantasy, everyone blesses her and her family looks at her with love and pride. Her engagement would never have been broken, but a jarring realization halts the seductive vision. She realizes with clarity that Lord Battle does not exist in that dream world, and a world without him is meaningless. Memories of Battle saving her over and over again flood her mind, anchoring her to the painful but precious reality. Adia embraces him tightly, confessing that she has always wanted to see him as she rejects the false paradise. She clasps her hands together in prayer, gathering her holy power to fight for the man she loves. With unwavering resolve, she declares that she will live alongside Lord Battle no matter the cost. Radiant light explodes from her hands, enveloping the possessed prince in a cleansing aura to drive out the darkness. The dark entity shrieks in agony as the holy light burns through its hold, forcing it to separate from its host. Crystal shards begin to encase the demon, ignoring its desperate pleas for her to stop the sealing ritual. Adia pushes her magic to the limit, deaf to the monster's screams as the crystal prison rapidly expands. Sweat runs down her face as she prays for the strength to finish the job, urging the magic to hold for just a little longer. The demon cries out one last time, realizing its manipulation has failed against her love. As the final seal locks into place, a small, pathetic voice whimpers for help from within the shrinking darkness. Adia stands victorious over the crystallized prison, watching as the entity is reduced to a harmless state. The trapped creature sobs, claiming it was merely a victim controlled by the dream demon all along. Adia stares in shock at the small creature inside the crystal, realizing it takes the form of the Great Spirit. The forest falls silent as Adia kneels before the sealed spirit, the battle won but the mystery deepening. The small, dark creature thanks his liberator for saving him, his voice weak and grateful. Exhausted, the spirit asks to be allowed to sleep for just a little while. Layla clutches the creature in her arms while Adia stares in horror, whispering a denial. The barrier shatters completely, signaling the release of the entity. Screams erupt as Layla collapses, supported by guards amidst the chaos. A voice commands the madness to stop and cries out Adia's name. Layla frantically pleads with her sister, insisting that Adia would surely forgive something like this. The reply is cold and final, stating that she can no longer be defended for the crime of breaking a monster seal. Layla stares in shock, asking if her big sister is betraying her. The scene shifts to a grand hall where Layla's sentence is formally delivered. House Sirios is stripped of its noble title for summoning a royal candidate and putting her in danger. The father claims it is a misunderstanding, but the official states the holy nation now fears the Empire's might. It is declared that Lord Battle pointed the Empire's power directly at their nation. The joyous engagement was ruined by the bride's own relative, causing panic due to the difference in national strength. Spectators gossip eagerly, wondering what punishment Layla will receive for such disgrace. Layla Sirios is charged with trespassing and endangering both Prince Battle and Lady Adia. The judge prepares to read the final verdict from the document in his hand. She is sentenced to be sent to a convent while her family kneels in shame. Layla protests that she is a saint as the guards drag her away. As the doors close, she screams in disbelief, asking if they are really sending her to a convent. The view pans over the formidable, towering walls of the border fortress. The heavy gates loom ahead as the carriage rumbles forward. Inside the carriage, Layla realizes with horror that they have just passed the border gate. She frantically asks the driver why they aren't turning back to the convent. Realizing she is being abandoned, she screams at the hooded figure driving the cart. The driver unhitches the horse and rides away, ignoring her desperate pleas to come back. A thought echoes that the imposter should die right there in the wasteland. Stranded alone in the dark forest, Layla yells in frustration and fear. Her stomach growls loudly, emphasizing her hopeless situation. Glowing eyes appear in the darkness of the trees, surrounding her on all sides. She stares in terrified silence as the monsters close in. Screaming for help, she calls out to her sister one last time. Back in the capital, Adia Sirios is proclaimed as the one who purified the Great Spirit Morpheus. She is officially acknowledged as the Great Saint of Dream Breaking. The High Priest places a ceremonial crown upon her head in the cathedral. Adia smiles gently, adorned in her intricate veil and royal accessories. The crowd erupts in applause, offering their congratulations to the new saint. They marvel that she achieved what even the great saint of 100 years ago could not. It is announced that she will be adopted into the royal family of Maya as a princess. Her engagement to Prince Battle is formally announced to the cheering public. The couple stands together amidst falling petals, smiling happily at the crowd. A voice thinks that Adia is beautiful as he gazes at her. As the wedding celebration continues, a melancholic thought arises that Adia must have loved her. Memories of the sisters' past flash by, showing moments of kindness and connection. A close-up of a smiling face appears, recalling a time of innocence. The final thought lingers, wondering when it all went wrong.